Welcome back to episode 4 of Portfolio Builder. Today we're going to talk about investing accounts. Before we get started, simple disclaimers that I'm not a CFP, not a CPA, and certainly not a financial expert, just a guy trying to build out educational content to hopefully address some of the gaps in financial literacy. So an investing account is something that I personally divide into taxable accounts, retirement savings accounts. Within retirement savings accounts, there are a bunch of different options, and these are kind of covered in some of the videos below. If you look for my multiple brokerage personalities, you'll see how I use each of my accounts differently. But to get started, taxable accounts are usually where a lot of people are first getting exposure to investing. If you're with me on public, you can find that a lot of the people there are new investors. They've been investing maybe since the crash in 2020, and a lot of them actually are not familiar with the Roth IRA. A taxable account has the benefit that it is liquid. You can pull that money out and then you can go ahead and spend it. You don't have to worry about waiting like you do with retirement savings account. So taxable accounts have that pros that it is liquid, that is your money. You can do with it as you please. The downside with it is that it is taxable. What I mean is you have capital gains. Let's say you invested in the stock A made a 10% return, and you decided to sell it under a year. If you did that, you're on the hook for short-term capital gains, and Uncle Sam wants taxes based off your tax bracket. If you held it for a year and 1 day, then it's a long-term capital gains, and you might be in the 0, 15, or 20% bracket. But that money that you made, part of it is kind of lost to having to pay taxes, and you need to make sure you set it aside for tax day the following year. That is one of the downsides of kind of a taxable account. For me personally, I like to use mine to grow my emergency fund, like you saw in my kind of emergency fund video for, I think it was episode 3. I like to do months 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond in a taxable account. That is a way to grow my money and try to hedge against inflation so that my money continues to work for me, so that I have more purchasing power. But a taxable account isn't always the best first step if you're trying to build wealth for the long term. If you're trying to set yourself up in the future to make sure you're not having to continue working well into retirement age. And that's why I bring out retirement savings account as an important wealth builder. Retirement savings accounts come in many different flavors, but depending on what options you have available, it might dictate what I would recommend as number one. Generally speaking, if you have a 401k or 403b through your work that has a match, that is generally what I recommend as being your first place to look at setting aside some money. The reason why these matches are important is because that is potentially free money that your employer is going to give to you based on their whatever policy they have. So if you have a match and you're able to just put the minimum to get all of that match, that is taking that free money off the table, collecting it for yourself, and then hopefully investing it into the future. Problem with these accounts though is that that money is locked up until 59 and a half or later. There are certain exceptions, there are certain ways that you can withdraw it or get a loan, but I'm not going to cover that here. But that is one of the things that you need to be aware of. When you're setting that money aside, you're setting it aside for the long term. So you don't want to be setting aside money that you need to pay your kind of monthly expenses. And that gets me back to the idea of budgeting, like we talked about in the first video. You want to set aside money that you're fine saying goodbye to until it's retirement age. But again, you need to invest in yourself. You don't want to be kind of in your 60s working because you have to work. You want to be working because you want to work. But it is important to fully leverage these retirement savings accounts so that you can allow your money to work for you, to grow, to compound over time, and to take advantage of the fact that these retirement savings accounts are essentially able to grow tax-free. What I mean is if you have dividends from real estate investment trusts like REITs or dividend companies, you're able to take that money, fully invest it back into those, and not have to worry about paying capital gains taxes on that income. Other things, if you decide to swing trade within it and you happen to make a 20% profit, that 20% profit, that full amount, you can go ahead and reinvest it. And that kind of is the benefit of these retirement savings accounts. Within those retirement savings accounts, there is kind of potentially the Roth, where you're funding it with post-tax money, meaning that you take money that is yours after you've paid your taxes and you invest into that retirement savings account. It's able to grow tax-free, and then when it comes time to withdraw, it is again tax-free. You're able to withdraw not only the principal amount, but all the gains that you've accrued over those many years of investing and growing. And that is one of the benefits of Roth, whether it's 401k or a Roth IRA, is that you paid your taxes up front, you're able to grow it, compound it, and let it build into something hopefully amazing. and then you get to withdraw it and do it tax-free. There are post-tax benefits to that, and that's why a lot of people are trying to go ahead and find ways to convert into a Roth IRA. But you might not have an option to do that. You might have to do pre-tax contributions or kind of like a traditional IRA where you have to go ahead and invest money on a pre-tax benefit. What this means is that money gets to get set aside into your retirement savings account without having to pay any taxes on it. So you inherently get to save whatever your tax bracket is at that time. Then it goes into an account and it grows tax-free. But the problem with that is when it comes time to pull that money out, that money that you made, both on the principal as well as any gains that you had, is going to be taxable when you pull that money out. The thought process is when you're contributing, you're going to be at a higher tax bracket. When you're in retirement, you're going to be a lower tax bracket. So it works out. But Uncle Sam always wants his cut. And so that's kind of the downside to potentially a traditional IRA or something that's funded with pre-tax money. Depends on what your current situation and how you're looking at it. But again, retirement savings accounts are something that's important to consider. But we talked about one where I said match with your 401k, 403b is going to be important. After that, usually I would recommend a Roth IRA. Some people, because of income limits, might have to do a traditional IRA, then backdoor it in through a Roth conversion. Again, topic for a different video, but that would be 2. Number 3 would then be going back to the 401k potentially, trying to max that out, and then eventually getting to a taxable account. But like I said, it doesn't have to be an all or none. Part could be in a taxable account, part could be in retirement savings, but this is something that you need to consider when you're setting aside money to invest, is what your goals with that money, what your timeline is with that money, and finding out which account is best for you. Another one would be an HSA. That's going to be kind of getting into the mix. It's difficult to say exactly when the order of operations is best for an HSA, but if you have an HSA, kind of maxing it out and then having that kind of safety net for unexpected medical costs is also going to be important because it's able to grow. It is also a great wealth builder, and so I personally use an HSA to also add to my retirement savings. I'd rather pay my own personal medical bills up front with the cash that I have on hand from emergency fund to let that money grow, compound with time, because I know later on when I get older, I'm eventually going to spend that money for my kind of medical expenses. But that's my little kind of portfolio builder on investing accounts, being mindful of which account you're trying to use, what the pros and cons are, what you're trying to do with that money, what your timeline is, all important considerations. Hope that helps. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when the next episode comes out. Thanks for listening.